let's start by asking a few questions about 3C's initiative, because I was supposed to speak about the conditions for success of 3C's initiative in 2050, which is like a long shot from today, which makes it very difficult. But because my most beloved strategic thinker of the English tongue was Colin Gray. He used to claim that strategy is all about asking questions. So I will start by asking questions, and I will not be able to answer all those questions, but at least they will drive us closer to understanding the realities of 3C's initiative. So first of all, is the 3C's initiative a grouping of nations that were the orphans of the great ocean discovery, world ocean discovery, that were simply omitted in this great pursuit of wealth and power from the connectivity to the world ocean that the Western Europeans enjoyed? Some in the West claim that this is exactly so. Is it maybe the group of countries that emerged after the First World War, where the great empires collapsed? Habsburg empires, Hohenzollern German Empire, and the Russian Empire. They all collapsed, and suddenly multiple nations emerged. The politicians from those empires, especially the Russians and Germans, used to be very skeptical about the future of those nations on the international arena. Some of them even called them the bastards of the Versailles Treaty, seasonal states, or even worse sometimes. But there were also even remarkable American strategists like George Kennan, that was mentioned, I think, today even, at least once, this is at least what it seemed to me, who also was not very happy when he was describing the imbalances on the international arena following the First World War, calling all those countries the remnants of the mostly Habsburg Empire. So as you can see, the cycle of history sometimes repeats itself in a very peculiar way, because all this grouping of nations create a disruption among those who were running the world for the last 200 years. And people don't like changes. People don't like changes. On this historic note, I'll add one more thing. Following the Second World War, most of those countries that are within the 3C's initiative were more or less within the tender touch of the Soviet continental empire, with, of course, all the formalities in place that, the flags existed, the capitals existed, the governments existed, but foreign policy didn't exist, maybe with an exception of Yugoslavia a little. So, this is a grouping of countries that the great powers of the world that we know are not used to seeing, knowing, or understanding. And this is the impediment number one that will have to be overcome before we reach 2050. The consequence of everything I just said is the fact that because all those countries, more or less, were not running their own policies over the last 200 years, which means that, roughly speaking, they didn't decide about their own development, connectivity, how they build roads or highways or ports, but external empires were making those decisions. So connectivity sucks. And within 3C's, there is a huge gap. Or let's put it down, geopoliticians like to say imbalance. There is a huge imbalance between the Western Europe and Three Seas grouping. Even one could argue that there is this imbalance is also between Russian Empire and this grouping, because the Russian Empire also being excluded from the spoils of the great world ocean revolution, but the Tsars were ruling this country, and then the communists as well, and they were trying to modernize this way or another by having the centralized power, which we didn't have for the reasons that I outlined before. So what is the future now? We all thought that the future would be only bright. We all entered the European Union, most of us entered NATO, and the future was supposed to be beautiful and sunny. And suddenly, with the great power competition back in town between US and China, with some role of Russia and maybe some role of Europe, whatever we call Europe, it turns out again that this part of the world might be a battlefield of the influences of empires, depending how we play the game. 5 years ago, when some people in Poland realized that this was coming, we thought that, okay, we need to play the game well. Let's read Mackinder again, because Mackinder, if he lived today, would be very happy to see Three Seas Initiative in the making. I also think that theoretically speaking, and on the level of support, the sea powers of this world, United Kingdom and United States, are supporting Three Seas Initiative because this is a very useful and handy instrument of influencing balance of power in Europe in case there is some unfavorable consolidation of the European peninsula against the sea powers' interests. So we were thinking how to use it, how to use this mental map, to modernize the country, to create this sort of the power to move forward. We were thinking how to also use the argument that we need to have Three Seas Initiative because there is another phenomenon happening in Europe, which is sort of natural, but natural of human making. German economy is a monster. They are so great and competent in what they do, just like Amazon in the United States now, that they tend to sort of devour and influence the neighborhood, okay? And it happens because they are so proficient in what they're doing. So they create the supply chains, the value chains, the division of labor, all in line with the interests of the German economy. How it is connected via infrastructure highly influences the yields, the division of profits of labor and so on, without the need to go into further details. I hope you all understand what I mean. So at that time, 5 years ago, we also thinking how to sort of create a new energy, new momentum, to try to divert from this one-way ticket. How to create the connectivity north and south. How to bundle up with the American interests to influence European peninsula. How to create, from this, how to use all those phenomena to create something new called Three Seas Initiative. There was the third factor that seemed to be important 5-6 years ago, and it remains so, but from the different perspective. I see it from a different perspective now. China, the rise of China, and Belt and Road Initiative. And it still, we need to remember what Mackinder was saying about connectivity across landmass of Eurasia. And without going into details, maybe during Q&A session you'll have such questions. We were taking a look at the map, And we were seeing that if China wanted to connect to Europe and connect both lungs of Eurasia, most productive lungs of Eurasia being Europe and China, the road is through Three Seas Initiative, and in particular through Poland and Romania. This is geography. And how to leverage this situation to sort of enhance your position within the current structure of the international affairs. So we wanted to do all this. At that time we were thinking we would, create a golden solution. The last question. But still, it was not perfect. Because if you are thinking about grand strategy of Poland, you need to remember about Ukraine and Belarus. Our buffer zone, our brethren in the east, that either make us safe, or if they don't exist, you cannot develop anything, because Russia becomes a party to the system of great power system in Europe, and it influences the balance in Europe, and your agenda is gone. And this is what is happening now, by the way. So we wanted to do all this at once, and Three Seas was this thinking. That was in line with our ancient geopolitical thoughts, especially designed by Romer more than 100 years ago. But moving it aside, right now, today, we are in a situation where there is a great power competition in Eurasia. Everybody understands what the rise of China means now. There is a great competition over connectivity. There is a full understanding today now, which was not clear 5 years ago, what connectivity means for the division of labor and value chain, all across Eurasia and around Eurasia. There is an enhanced sensitivity of all players, including Western Europeans, which don't like Three Seas Initiative too much, although they don't like to say it openly. Because nobody wants a change in the balance of power, and Three Seas Initiative might change the balance of power. That's why all those tensions that we can see today. Also, I was thinking, and we were thinking 5 years ago, that Three Seas Initiative would be a perfect vehicle for the US. Soft power projection, energy, money, technology. What a brilliant idea it would have been if really the Americans had paid this money and had contributed. But they didn't, to the extent it was required to really move it forward before the great power competition in Eurasia really launched. Now it's very difficult. Now there is this feeling that, what will be the future of the Three Seas Initiative, especially in reference to what Germany thinks about it, what will be the German role in it. So the questions abound. Today there are even more questions than there were 5 years ago. So it's so difficult to talk about conditions for success in 2015. So let me sum up before I move to the Q&A session, which I promised to the organizers, by saying the following. The perfect scenario for my country, and I hope the neighboring countries. The United States is back for real, not for empty talk, and contributes money and technology into Three Seas. Europeans understand that Europe has to consolidate and to create a new balance. And technology and infrastructure is a name of the game, especially when you confront China that is coming. And you need to create a strong belt of countries that are not a peripheria to the core in order to be successful, because Europe is not an island. And my last but not least, for me as a Pole, for 3 C's to succeed, Russia must be out of the balancing system of Europe. Because the primary objective of Russian grand strategy since Peter the Great has been to enter the European balancing system. And in order to balance the system and reap modernization, it has to sort of create a situation where all those countries in Central and Eastern Europe are only a belt of stability and not necessarily development. So this is the reality that, in my personal opinion, we are facing, and we will see whether we will live up to understand and to face this challenge properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much.